Hi, welcome back to Makeaway Life Coaching. My name is Sarah Abbott and I'm the life coach here. So in case you missed our introductory video, we are here to help you get unstuck in life and to help you with your story and help you to get the life of your dreams. We're in the middle of a book series. This is the book, How We Love. This book will change your life. I can almost guarantee it. It changed my life so much. Every therapist I've ever had said this is the one book they think everyone should read. I'm a life coach. I think it's the one book everyone should read. So we've been diving into it, and I hope that if you've been following with us, you've been finding it useful. And I hope that if this is your first time, then you will go back and watch the other videos because it's really, really good information. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the imprint. So an imprint, in case you're new here, is the idea that in your family of origin, the family you grew up in, the way you were loved by your parents, the way you received love, left an imprint on you, as if you're putting your thumb in clay. And this imprint is still with you as an adult, and it determines how you give and receive love still. It's so important that you know that, because if you're in a relationship, if you're married, if you're a parent, if you have a boss, if you have friends, if you still have parents, all of these interactions, it's so important to know how you give and receive love and how the other person does, so that it's like you're speaking the same language. So today we're going to talk about the imprint called the pleaser. Now, I'm a vacillator, which we're going to last because it's kind of hard for me to talk about how messed up my own self can be. So I'm saving that for last. But so vacillators, like, their least favorite thing is pleasers. So if I seem a little like sarcastic, I apologize. I don't know. Maybe we're just jealous because pleasers always seem so happy and vacillators are always moody. I don't know. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about the pleaser imprint. What is the pleaser imprint? Well, first question. Do you find yourself apologizing for things even if you're not sorry? Like, oh, sorry. But then you're like, wait a minute, I'm not sorry. Or maybe you don't even know if you're sorry. If that's true, you might be a pleaser. Did you have a parent growing up who was fearful or worried all the time or angry with you or critical of you or even critical or angry with somebody else? If that's true, then maybe you're a pleaser. Do you notice that your tendency is to keep people at a distance because you fear that if they knew the truth about you, they wouldn't like you anymore? Then you might be a pleaser. All right, this is a big one. Do you struggle with feeling resentful in a lot of relationships? If that's true, you're probably a pleaser. Pleasers have a major problem with resentment, much more so than the other attachments. So that's kind of like a hint that you might be a pleaser. Okay, pleasers. So let's get into just kind of like overview. Before I begin, I want you to know that I pray every day my boys will marry pleasers. Could you imagine having a better daughter-in-law than somebody who loves peace and is always has a smile on her face and avoids conflict? I was like, that sounds pretty darn dreamy, Lord. Sign me up for 2 of those with my boys. And so, you know, pleasers, oh my gosh, there's so much upside to being a pleaser. It can be just such a wonderful way to be in the world, but there is like a dark side that you have to be aware of if you really want to be free and not be like a puppet with like your attachment imprint pulling your strings and causing you to have reactions or resentments that you really want to be free of. Okay, what does it mean being a pleaser? Well, if people are always talking about how nice you are, you might be a pleaser. It's like, here's how pleasers are. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, I love so-and-so. He's so nice. She's so nice. She's the nicest. She's just always has a smile on her face. Okay, so these are pleaser tendencies. It's very important for them to be perceived as friendly and nice and happy pretty much all the time. So that is definitely a pleaser imprint style. Okay, the rest of us are not pleasers, and we're like, why is this person always like so happy? Is anybody really this nice? This is what I'm always wondering. Is this even true? Can this even be true that somebody's actually this nice? So the question is, are people nice all the time? No. And so that's the underbelly of the pleaser. is that there's a disconnect between what they're presenting to the world and what's really happening inside. So like I said before, pleasers often had fearful, angry, or critical parents. And in addition, pleasers were very sensitive and empathetic kids. So one of the things that's really important to them is that their parents were happy so that they could be happy, because they have so much empathy that it's like everyone else's happiness makes them happy, and so they become really intent on pursuing that happiness. Let me read you this quote from the book. The pleaser child adopts strategies that will relieve the parent and ultimately themselves. These kids train themselves to read and respond to the distress that they perceive in others. As adults, they are set up to be in the pursuing role, seeking proximity with and taking care of others. Okay, like I've said before, there is a free test on the How We Love website that will help you determine what your imprint is. But here's some traits of the pleaser that might kind of indicate you towards whether or not you're a pleaser. The first one is that pleasers need a lot of praise. They need praise at work. They need praise at home. They need a lot of praise from their spouse, from their partner, whoever. Secondly, they have a difficult time making decisions. And third, they might fear change more than other people. More traits of the pleaser. Anger is an underdeveloped emotion. And I can't wait. Later, we're going to do a series on boundaries, but basically what you should know now is that boundaries are related to anger. And so the other thing that the pleaser, because their anger is undeveloped, another thing that results from that is that they have a really hard time setting boundaries and holding boundaries, because it takes a little bit of comfort with anger in order to do those things with certain people, and that is what the pleaser struggles with. Pleasers also struggle with being unaware of their own needs and desires and even feelings sometimes. There's like a real disconnect when they look inside. They're not always really sure what they want, what they need, and what they actually feel. Pleasers are often preoccupied with how other people perceive them. So they're kind of like in other people's heads, looking at them thinking like, what is this person thinking of me right now? Instead of in their own head looking out thinking, what do I think of this person that I'm talking to right now? Another thing is pleasers work so hard to keep peace and harmony with other people that they tend to feel resentful when the other people in their lives are not working that hard to keep the peace and to keep the harmony. And so that's, again, where we get like resentment building. Resentment is just such a huge pleaser thing that if you really struggle with resentment, take the test, but you might very well be a pleaser. Pleasers in general tend to struggle with anxiety a little bit more than other people, or at least like they struggle with anxiety a lot. And one of the tools that the pleaser child develops in order to manage their own anxiety is to focus on meeting the needs of other people. When you're a kid, the pleaser tends to focus on meeting the needs of the parent, but as they get older, it turns into, oh, I feel anxious. Quick look around, whose needs can I meet right now so that I can calm my own anxiety? And so as an adult, that turns into your spouse or your partner, your children, your friend, your boss. It's like you're meeting needs. And the real reason you're doing that is to just calm your own sense of anxiety. It's a coping mechanism you've developed. The problem is, depending on who it is, the other person's imprint, they often feel kind of overwhelmed. Not everybody. Some people love the attention and the kind of codependency sometimes. But depending on the imprint, some people might feel really overwhelmed by like, why is this person constantly trying to make everything in my life better? So that might be something that you struggle with relationships. So the pleaser, like we talked about, can struggle with resentment. I want to read you this quote. As the pleaser gets older, their resentment builds as they minimize, ignore, and avoid expressing their own frustrations. They grow resentful of the fact that no one takes care of their needs and no one appreciates everything that they do to help others. Resentment, like I've said before, is a big deal with pleasers, and the pleaser feels like they spent a lifetime trying to please other people, and they eventually kind of start running out of energy or desire to do so, and if they're not careful, they kind of fall into bitterness because they don't feel like anyone appreciated this lifetime of service that they gave them. Pleasers often also struggle with loneliness, and the reason for that is because they are not letting themselves be seen and known for who they really are. So if you're hiding yourself because your feelings might make other people upset or, angry, and so you're constantly just, everything's fine, everything's great, well then people don't know you. In fact, my therapist many years ago told me that she had a client tell her that being married to a pleaser is like being married to a ghost, because they're not really showing up emotionally, and the other partner can kind of feel like, who are you? Well, what do you really think about this? And why are you not willing to ever share with me who you really are and what you really need? Of course, not every imprint is going to respond to that the same way, but then, the feeling of loneliness created by not being seen and known is pretty profound. Let me read you this. Pleasers need someone to take care of, since they calm their own anxieties by focusing on and caring for others. They depend on the caretaking role to take the focus off their own internal discomfort. The need for connection and proximity often leads the pleaser to avoid conflict and vulnerability, to avoid giving their opinion, to avoid really showing up in the relationship to be seen and heard. This goes beyond their most intimate relationships. They go along and get along with their partner, their kids, their friends, their colleagues. Friends might feel not super connected to the pleaser because they don't really know who she is or who he is. And kids kind of grow up with pleasers and they say, yeah, my parent was nice, but they don't really know anything about their parent. What's their parent interested in? What's he passionate about? Everyone just kind of feels like they don't know the pleaser that well. And of course, on the inside, the pleaser probably feels like nobody knows me, and that's lonely. All right, that pretty much wraps up my very limited introduction to what the pleaser imprint is, what it looks like. I really encourage you to buy the book, How We Love. Take the free test on their website to help you identify your imprint. If you feel like you might be a pleaser, then grab the book. If you don't want to read the whole thing, just read chapter 1, which is their intro, chapter 6, which is about the pleaser imprint. And if you really want to challenge yourself, you can read chapters 11, which one is it? 11, 13, or 14, because that talks about the pleaser when they're married to the vacillator, or married to the avoider, or married to the chaotic controller. Those are the best chapters. They're so helpful in understanding yourself. Okay, next week we are going to be doing my chapter, The Vacillator. Oh my goodness. Of course, I went to therapy for anger, because if you're an angry person, you're probably a vacillator. It's like the big giveaway. And I was talking to my therapist, and she brought up abandonment issues. And I was like, what? I don't have abandonment issues. I'm a sassy lady who wields her anger like a sword, right? So it's like, so crazy, because vacillators have really deep abandonment issues, which creates the anger. Oh my gosh, that was so ugly. It took her a long time to convince me, and then it helped when I read the book and I read my chapter, Vacillator, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really do have abandonment issues. That's disgusting. And it, just such a struggle for me to even accept it. And but here's the freedom of this book. Buy the book, How We Love, because there's so much freedom and wisdom in this book. But when I finally accepted that I had abandonment issues, then instead of like my abandonment issues pulling my strings and making me like karate chop everybody because I was an angry person, I was able to really heal some of those. Some of these childhood woundings are something you kind of have to work on forever, at least for me. That is turning out to be true. But it's really powerful to know what's driving your reactions and to know what's driving your behaviors. That's where your freedom is. So join us next week. We will be here on Thursday. We're here every Thursday, and we'll be talking about the last imprint we're going to talk about, which is the vacillator. And after that, we're going to kind of get into some of the pairings, what this might look like in a marriage if you're like pleaser avoider or vacillator avoider, blah, blah, blah. And we'll kind of go into those, like just barely dip a toe, but it'll be so good. So in the meantime, buy the book, read it. I hope you have a really fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.